Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I move into today's review, do want to remind you if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to become a member of our Patreon, there is a link to it in the show notes. And of course, be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. You'll find an invite link to our Discord server also in the show notes. Today, I am going to be reviewing Urban Shadows 2nd Edition from Magpie Games. This 320-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $49.99. If you want to grab just the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $24.99. And be sure to stay tuned because I will let you know how you can get into the running to win a copy of Urban Shadows 2nd Edition in PDF. And I promise, as with all of my contests, it'll be very easy to get on board. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the 2nd edition of Urban Shadows. A couple of things I want to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, the fine folks over at Magpie Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book. I do want to give you a good feel for what you're going to find inside. First thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life. So let's give credit where credit is due. There were also a lot of Kickstarter backers who helped bring this to life because this was a very, very successful Kickstarter project. If you're not familiar with Urban Shadows, it is a role-playing game of urban fantasy and urban horror. I got to say, I think it leans a little more towards urban horror, in my opinion, but then again, might just be me. And this is also built on the Apocalypse engine. So this is a PBTA game. If you are not familiar with the Apocalypse engine, I'll get into a little bit of detail about it. I'm not going to take a deep dive into PBTA, but I'll give you a little bit of a feel. So what we're looking at here is a setting where monsters are real. They exist kind of on the periphery of humanity. So most mortals do not know that they exist, but they do exist, and they are in a power struggle for the city alongside mortals and other supernatural creatures. So there are a few concepts that are very important to Urban Shadows. First off are these circles. So we have 12 different playbooks in PBTA games. It's kind of our classes. With these various different playbooks, we have different circles. So we have 3 playbooks in each circle. As an example, the night circle is vampires, ghosts, werewolves. So mortals here, we've got investigators, defenders, traffickers. We have wild, which are fae, demons, and constructs. So as far as the playbooks go, we have pretty much many of the tropes taken care of. Now, I have to point out, I am not necessarily very well versed in urban fantasy or urban horror. I am a horror fan, but my authors tend to be Stephen King, Peter Straub, Ramsey Campbell, and so forth. But I am familiar with the major beats of urban fantasy as well as urban horror. So taking a look at the different circles, something else that's important to keep in mind, the player characters, when you're creating characters, you are not putting together a party that's going to be going off on adventures. You're going to have different characters are going to be members of different circles. They are going to have different agendas. They have different goals. And many times they are going to conflict with the other player characters. So you want to keep in mind that there is player versus player action in Urban Shadows. So if that's something that bothers you and your group, this probably is not going to be for you. So something else you want to keep in mind is we have a currency known as debt. Now, this is how the Master of Ceremonies, the game master in Urban Shadows, is looking to draw player characters together. Now, you may not be drawing all the player characters at your table together in an instance using debt, but you might have 2 or 3 characters working together towards a common goal because of debt. So, what debt basically is the amount of power that a character has. It is debt that's owed to them. It's not debts that they have to someone else, although player characters will also have debts to other NPCs, other player characters. But the debt is a currency, it's a mechanic to help bring in other players to help you out. So, something that helps alleviate some of the PC versus PC action as far as that goes. Another concept that's very important is the city itself is a character in the game. So the Master of Ceremonies will have various different moves that they can utilize for the city. So I guess it's probably time for me to discuss Powered by the Apocalypse if you're not familiar with it. In a Powered by the Apocalypse game, you are playing to find out what happens. So the MC of Urban Shadows Adventures is not going to be sitting there running some deeply plotted, scene by scene linear adventure. Not at all. The MC is going to have situations, locations, NPCs, as well as the player characters, and you're going to see various different moves. So, moves is a term used by Powered by the Apocalypse games, which are abilities that your characters have, but it's also abilities that the Master of Ceremonies has. This is one of the tricky things that kind of throws people with Powered by the Apocalypse, because looking at the moves leads someone to possibly believe, well, that's all they can do. That's all their character can do. That's all that the MC can do. That's not the case. Now, the way Urban Shadows is designed is that one move should lead to another move, which brings into another move. So there's a snowball effect. So you're wondering, okay, so I don't know about Powered by the Apocalypse. What is a move? So player will have their playbook. So each of the types of characters is going to have a playbook. So we've got a dozen of them. Let's take a look at one right here. In Urban Shadow 2nd Edition, we have 4 attributes. We have blood, heart, mind, spirit. And you will have modifiers that get assigned to your attributes. So you're not looking at, well, I've got a score of 18 or I've got a score of 12. No, it's going to be a plus or minus or 0 as far as your modifier. So as a starting character, you will have 2 +1s, a 0, and a -1. And depending on the playbook you choose, it's going to determine how you allocate those modifiers. So with the aware, which is a mortal who is aware that these monsters and these supernatural creatures exist, you'd have blood 0, heart 1, mind -1, spirit 1. Pretty easy. We have circle ratings because remember, Urban Shadows is a game of power. It's a power struggle. Everybody's looking to gain power, take power away from others. So circle ratings: mortals 1, knight 0, power 1, wild -1. We have circle status. We have introductory questions the player should answer to provide a lot more backstory for their character. We've got starting gear, starting debts. Already talked a little bit about debts. And then we have let it out abilities. So one of the basic moves that any character can utilize is let it out. But the thing is, each playbook is going to have different abilities for letting it out. So here, gain access to a secure or lockdown location. Draw immediate mortal attention to a person or situation. spot a previously overlooked clue or advantage in the immediate area, as well as convince an NPC to act on their kindness, role, or own best interest. So when a move is being made, you're going to roll 2 6-sided dice, and you're going to include your modifier positive, negative, or 0. A roll of 6 or less is a failure. Now, it is up to the master of ceremonies. Now, does that failure mean that you absolutely failed? It could possibly mean that the character or NPC succeeded, but now they've got a major complication. Maybe there's a huge challenge that's been added into the proceedings. Or then again, it could just mean, well, sorry, you just didn't pull it off. On a roll of 7 to 9, it is success, but. So it is successful, but yes, a complication has arisen. That doesn't have to be a major complication. It could be, well, you achieved what you were looking to do, but it took longer than you expected it to do, or maybe it took more of your resources available to you in order to succeed. And then on a roll of 10 or higher, it is a success without any complications. Pretty easy. But I will say, with Powered by the Apocalypse games, moves tend to throw people off. Game masters too. And for the most part, a lot of times with game masters, they're not sure when do they utilize a move and what kind of move will they use. Well, thankfully, in this second edition of Urban Shadows, we have got a really nice detailed Master of Ceremonies section here that is going to provide more info about using moves. And I really, really appreciated this because Magpie Games publishes a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse titles. They could have approached this where it's like, well, we do PBTA all the time. People should know this. No, they go into some really good examples here. So I really appreciate that quite a bit. We get more information going kind of behind the scenes of the playbooks. What do the playbooks really mean as far as the various different circles? As I had mentioned previously, we've got the city is a character in Urban Shadows. So we have city moves that the MC can utilize, and we get into detail about that. We also have a couple of example cities, one being my hometown of Chicago. I thought that was kind of cool. And we also have Santiago, and we will get information about those cities. We'll get info about the movers and shakers, important NPCs, locations, and such. There is a ton packed into Urban Shadows, and I can see why the first edition of this was so well received. And keep in mind, it's not like we've got a glut of urban fantasy and urban horror role-playing games out there. So Urban Shadows has really stood out, and this second edition stands out even more so. As far as the production quality, paper stock, very nice, very thick. This is a stitched binding. This should hold up fairly well. Artwork throughout, I really like. There were a handful of pieces that just seemed a little bit off. Not a terrible amount, but maybe the facial expressions just seemed kind of odd. But for the most part, visually, this is really, really well done. Most of the artwork stands out. I love the fact that we're not looking at a tiny font either. I could easily read this with my aging eyes. So that was kind of a bonus too. But as you can see, just absolutely crammed with content. And then we wrap up with some appendices that has loads and loads of handouts and stuff that you'll be able to utilize at your game table to print out, to hand out copies to your players, and of course for the MC to have at hand as well. So we have the different advancement for the playbooks, circle moves, debt moves, advanced moves, faction moves, city moves. We get into detailed tables about various different locales throughout the city. Really well done. Like this quite a lot. Although I got to be honest, not really being overly familiar with like urban fantasy and urban horror, I don't know how effectively I could run Urban Shadows Second Edition. That's not a knock on the game. That's more on how I lack a lot of familiarity with the sort of stories, TV, movies, books, and comics and such that this draws inspiration from. All right, so that is a peek inside the second edition of Urban Shadows. Let's swing on over to the other camera because I'm going to share some final thoughts as well as my review score. I guess it's probably pretty obvious. I'm impressed by this second edition of Urban Shadows. As I've pointed out, and I point this out in other Powered by the Apocalypse engine reviews I've done, PBTA can be tricky. It can be tricky for players. It can be tricky for game masters. And I will say, I think this second edition of Urban Shadows might even be a little trickier. So it's important to keep in mind you need to have the right sort of game master and you need to have the right sort of players to really get the most out of a Powered by the Apocalypse game. If you have players out there who just want to delve into the minutia and rolling dice all the time, and they love when a combat encounter goes on for an hour, I'm going to tell you right now, Powered by the Apocalypse, as well as Urban Shadows Second Edition, is not going to be for them. If you have players and you're a game master who really loves the story aspect, the narrative aspect of role-playing games, not necessarily all the minutia and crunch and tons of dice rolling. Well, I'll tell you what, Urban Shadows Second Edition and Powered by the Apocalypse is probably going to be right up your alley. I will say once again, I'm not overly familiar with the genres of urban fantasy and urban horror, but I really do feel, from what I know of those genres, Urban Shadows Second Edition really has captured a lot of the elements that I believe are important in those sorts of stories. The reality is, if Powered by the Apocalypse is a good fit for both your players and yourself as a game master, and you're a fan of urban fantasy / urban horror, this is a no-brainer. You really need to own Urban Shadows Second Edition. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give this second edition of Urban Shadows a 9.5 out of 10. I enjoyed the hell out of reading this. I think this is an excellent production. Now, granted, I'm probably not the right game master to run Urban Shadows Second Edition effectively, but that's no knock on the game. That's more about how I'm built as a GM. All right, you might also be wondering, hey, wait a second, Jeff, I thought you were going to give everybody an opportunity to win a copy of Urban Shadows Second Edition in PDF. You normally have the contest in the middle of the video. Well, not today. It's going to be in the wrap up. So if you'd like to get into the running to win a copy of Urban Shadows Second Edition in PDF, got to do 3 things. Number 1, you must be a subscriber. Can't win if you're not a subscriber. Number 2, please give a thumbs up to the video. Now, I can't tell if you do that or not, but do me a favor and give the video a thumbs up. And then third, in the comment section, let me know what kind of urban fantasy or urban horror character you'd like to play in a role-playing game. Then what I will do is randomly select one lucky commenter, and then on July 1st, I will announce the winner on the live episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, which airs right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. All right, that is it for this time out. If you liked the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the aforementioned, The Gaming Gang Dispatch airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. And until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.